Here's another method of performing the multiple shift. Let's say once again we're going to control the 4 queens. What you do here is you just riffle them with the thumb and place them into 4 different parts of the deck. Now instead of going right into a Hindu shuffle type of action, what you do is you push these into the pack like this. That looks pretty fair. You give it one simple cut, and sure enough, all 4 queens on the top. This is by Arthur Buckley, and all you have to do is make sure when you place the queens into the deck, you put them in the upper half. Now I'm going to put them in face up so that you can see what's happening. The 4 queens, remember, in the upper half of the deck. That's important. You want to have at least a few cards to play with underneath the lowermost of the 4 queens. Now what happens is you never push the queens flush into the deck. This is where that jogging action comes in. You push them in a little bit at an angle, like this. The index finger pushes them back further, so they start to become in-jogged. Then you straighten out. So in apparently one action of pushing them into the deck, you actually in-jog the 4 queens like this. Now the reason you wanted to have a few cards beneath the last queen is you take the cards into your right hand, the index finger pushes back on those lower cards, just like that. You strip out some of those lower cards along with the queens in one simple cut, and that brings everything up to the top. So this is the Arthur Buckley multiple shift. My good buddy Mr. Frank Zach, he came up with a lovely touch, the same basic idea as the Arthur Buckley control, but here you can control the 4 kings, the 4 aces, or the 4 queens to the bottom of the deck. Here's how it's done. Same idea, you put the queens into 4 different parts, but because you're going to control them to the bottom, what you're going to do is put them in the lower half of the deck like that. The same action, it looks like you square them into the deck. All you do now is you just cut some of the upper cards like this onto the table, the rest of the deck like that, and you have the 4 queens now on the bottom of the deck. This is basically the same as the Arthur Buckley version, but to get them to the bottom, you do it sort of backwards. Once again, the 4 queens, 4 different parts of the deck. Remember, in the lower half, when you push them in, you do the same jogging action as before, so they end up in-jogged. So now the 4 queens are in-jogged. What you do is you hold the deck by the sides, concealing the in-jog from the audience, and then you just take some of these upper cards, bring them back, and then you pull those cards back and you strip out the queens underneath them, and you do that as the first part of a table cut. When you complete the cut, of course, you end up with the 4 queens on the bottom. And now it's time for the Di Vernon multiple card control. A nice thing about this particular card control is that the spectators get to place the 4 cards into different parts of the deck wherever they'd like, as opposed to the multiple shift where the magician puts the cards where he likes. Let's say once again you'd like to control the 4 queens. You say to spectator number 1, how about you, sir? Just call out stop wherever you'd like to place your card. They say stop. The card goes in, and you shuffle it into the deck just a little bit like this. Spectator number 2, exactly the same way. Anytime they'd like, they say stop. The queen goes in where they choose. You shuffle the deck once again, just like that. Card number 3, just the same as the others. They put it any place they'd like. You close up the deck. You go into a Hindu shuffle action, and they're hopelessly lost. The last queen, any place the spectator wants to put it, that's exactly where it goes. Face down, you give it a quick little Hindu shuffle, and anytime you'd like, a little shake. The 4 queens now on the bottom of the deck. This is how you do it. All you need to do is get a break. When they put the card in, you get a break below the selected card. So the first queen, the queen of spades, you pull it onto the packet, you get a little finger break below it as you square up the cards. Now here's what happens. You push the entire top block forward. So now the chosen card is on the bottom of the upper packet. You push those forward, and in a Hindu shuffle action, you pull out the instepped packet and you shuffle those off. So that's a very simple way to get the first card to the bottom. The second card is handled in almost the same way. It goes in, you get a little finger break below it, remember. You push that block forward, and just like before, your right hand pulls the inner block like this. The upper block falls down to the hand, but what happens is now the right hand places its packet jogged forward. That's actually important, to step the entire packet forward. Now when the right hand pulls the inner block to do the Hindu shuffle, the bottom card, which is one of the chosen cards, actually is rubbed against the base of the index finger, and almost like a paintbrush change, it sticks against the hand. So what happens when you do the Hindu shuffle, it's like a milk shuffle. The bottom card rubs against the hand, and that's added to the bottom card of the upper packet. Then you do the Hindu shuffling action. So that puts 2 of the chosen cards together on the bottom. The exact same action is repeated with card number 3. You spread through the deck. The card is returned. You get a little finger break below the card. That's important. Step the entire packet forward. Remember, pull these out, step them forward, and as you pull the in-jogged packet, you rub that bottom card against the base of the index finger. So you continue the shuffling action, and that's 3 cards down, 1 more to go. Let me do this last one at regular speed. You say, I'll tell you what, just call out stop anywhere you'd like. Right there, that's a perfectly good spot. Put your card in. There you go. Lost in the deck. You just do this, you continue that shuffling action, and now one at a time, the 4 cards have been controlled in order. That's important. One more little touch on this, you don't actually have to have the cards selected from the deck and removed and replaced. This is actually a very lovely way to control, say, 3 chosen cards when you're working on stage, or parlor situation when nobody's right up close. You just say, what I'd like to do with you, sir, would you mind, I'm going to cascade through the cards. Just call out the word stop anytime you'd like. I'll stop and show you that card. So that's exactly what you do. You cascade the cards, somebody says stop, that will be chosen card number 1. The 9 of spades. The moves are the same. You get the little finger break, you step it forward, you go into the Hindu shuffle action. That puts card number 1 on the bottom. Now for card number 2, you do the same thing. How about you, sir? Just call out stop. There we go. Card number 2, 6 of spades. Get the little finger break, you do the Hindu shuffling action, you do the stepping, you do the milk shuffles. That controls the 2 cards to the bottom now. And let me do it with one last card. How about you, sir? Just call out stop. Take a look at the card. There you go. Lost in the deck, you give it one quick little overhand shuffle, and when you finish this shuffling sequence, you have controlled the 3 cards to the bottom of the deck in order. Okay, let me show you now a very nice control called the Hofzinser spread control. Now, we've already talked about this a little bit with 1 card, but a nice thing about this is you can use the exact same technique and control several cards, even 5 or 6 or 7 cards. But just for illustrative purposes, once again, I will control the 4 queens. This is what it looks like at regular speed. Imagine those are 4 selected cards. You say, please, just tell me when to stop wherever you'd like to put your card. Card number 1 goes into the deck. You say, how about you, sir? Say stop. There's card number 2. Very good. How about you, sir? A little further in the deck. There's number 3, and 1 more. You can put yours about there. That's great. 4 cards, different parts of the deck, hopelessly lost. All you do is you turn them face up. There they are. This is exactly the same technique used for controlling 1 card and the same handling as culling cards. But you do it as a control. I'll leave them face up just to make it easier to follow. First card goes in about, say, there. As you close up the spread, remember, you push their card over. The thumb holds onto the card that's on the bottom of the right-hand packet, and at the same time, the right finger is secretly underneath. Pull the chosen card underneath the spread. That's the important action. Then you continue. You can actually separate the hands as you continue. You say to number 2, anytime you'd like, say stop. That's where your card is replaced. It goes in. I'll do it face up. You do the same action. You close up and you cull the card, or you control it underneath the spread with the first card. Exactly the same as before. Number 3, a little further down into the deck. You remember, you push it over. You cover it with this card, the bottom card of the right-hand packet, and then you secretly cull it with the fingertips of the right hand underneath the spread. Then you continue 1 more card about here, close up the spread, pull that underneath, and that gives you 4 cards from 4 different parts of the deck, all controlled to the bottom. Oh, I forgot to turn the last one over. That's okay, the move still works. Whether the card's face up or face down doesn't make any difference. That's the Hofzinser control. every once in a while, you're going to find yourself in a position where it's actually impractical to have a selected card physically removed from the deck. Let's say you're performing at a cocktail party, and the people are standing around, there's no tables available, and they have a drink in one hand and hors d'oeuvres in the other hand. In this case, what you might want to do is just riffle the corner of the deck and say, just call out the word stop, take a look at a card. Another nice thing about this particular technique is that later when you refer to the card, you say, picture it in your mind. Think of this card, form a mental image. Believe it or not, later when you finally reveal the card, more often than not, the spectator's going to say, that's amazing, I just pictured a card in my mind and he found it. This leaves a very, very strong impression. Now, I don't want you to underestimate this technique. In fact, sometimes when you do this, people are so convinced that you just read their mind that they're willing to contribute to your favorite charity. Now we have the spectator peek. Very, very strong method. All I'm going to do is hold the deck like this. With one finger, just riffle the corner. Anytime you'd like, just call out the word stop, look at the card. That way it'll be hopelessly lost in the deck. There'll be no way I could know what it is. In fact, to make it even more fair, I'll turn my head in the opposite direction. You ready? Don't forget, just call out the word stop. Stop, right there. Take a look at the card, don't forget it. I'll lose it in the deck. Now I can look back. I'll give the cards a quick little shuffle, just like this. And all I have to do to find your card, snap the finger, there it is. This is the spectator peek. All you have to do is get a little finger break either above or below the peeked card. Here's the standard procedure. You riffle the corner, you stop, they look at the card, then as you close up, the little finger of the left hand puts a little tip of the flesh into the break, just like this. Now that's if you want to get a break in front of the card. That's the standard method. If you'd like to get a break below the card, what you would do is the spectator would say stop. You say look at the card. Then you would drop that one card with the middle finger of the right hand. Now you get the little finger break with the left hand and you close up. See, this way you'll have a break above the selection. Now some people don't actually use the little finger. A nice little touch is to use the ring finger. This is a very elegant way to hold a break. The same technique, the spectator says stop, they look at the card, you close up. It looks very fair, but the little finger is curled in, sort of like handling an antique teacup, and that gives a very nice look. But the same idea, you still have the break. Now what can you do with the break? Well, you can turn it into a jog, you can shuffle or cut to it. I'll show you the jog. Let's say the spectator says stop, they look at the card, you get a little break. The way to turn it into a jog is this. You square up the deck, place the deck on the table, and now you've got the card in-jogged like that. The way this is done is after they look at the card, in this case we'll use the 9 of clubs, you get the little finger break as usual, and you pretend to square up the deck. What happens now is with your right thumb you lift up on that break, the tip of the left finger goes into the break and starts to jog it to the side. That's the first step. The second step is now the little finger of the left hand pushes it back. So you end up with the card being in-jogged. And of course, once you have an in-jog, you realize there are many, many things you can do with it at this point. Place it on the deck. You can go into a riffle shuffle immediately, lifting on the in-jog, shuffling those cards first, and that will end up putting the card down on the bottom of the deck. Another nice thing about using a side jog is you can actually do a pressure fan and keep the jog. Here's what happens. Somebody calls out stop. They look at the card. Apparently there's no breaks at all. You start to do the little side jogging action and a quick pressure fan. You can say, look, your card could be any place. Right now I know that the card is the ace of diamonds. It's the one card that's jogged off to the side. I follow that up with my eyes and I see it is the ace of diamonds. But that's kind of a nice thing. You give a little fan, you close it up, you let the spectator shuffle the deck. The action is very similar to before. They look at the card, you get the little finger break, you start the side steal action, which means the right thumb lifts up, you kick it off to the side, but you leave it jogged to the side. Now this is exaggerated so you can see exactly what's happening. It's jogged to the side, that's the peaked card. Now if you do a pressure fan and you turn your hand over, it's very easy to spot that jogged card. Follow it up with your eyes and you see it's the 6 of spades. That way you know exactly what card was looked at. Another thing you can do is close up the fan and regain that jog. So you have them peek a card, you do the little jog, you make a pressure fan, but when you close up the fan, you can actually place it on the table, lift it up, you still have that jogged card. So you can lift up on it, push down on it, and you've got your little finger break so you can control the card. Another nice little subtlety with the jog is if they look at a card, in this case the Queen of Hearts, you've got a little finger break, You lift up with your thumb, put the tip of the little finger in, jogging the card a little to the side. You can do a table spread, and just by looking at the table spread, I realize it's difficult to see because this is an all-over pattern, but obviously there's one jogged card right here. If you turn that over, you'll see it's the chosen card. In fact, let me do it with the card face up. This might make it a little easier to follow. There's the card. I'll hold a little break below it. You start to do the jogging action, remember, which jogs it to the side, like a little side step. That way it's exposed. When you fan out or spread the cards, you see, it's very easy to spot. It's the only card that's not parallel. But of course, when the cards are face down, this is very difficult to spot unless you know exactly what you're looking for. So the idea is you have somebody peek at a card, you square up the deck, you spread them on the table. Now you use your psychic vibrations and you determine the one card from a tabled spread, which is the one card that somebody just looked at and pictured in their mind. This lovely psychological ploy was invented by Cy Enfield. I use this all the time. It gives a very, very fair appearance. You say to the audience, what I'm going to do is hold the deck like this, and with one finger, just riffle the corner. Anytime as I riffle through the corners, just call out the word stop. I will stop, let you look at the card, and then I'll lose it in the deck. That way, it's hopelessly lost. Then you dribble the cards into your hands. Well, that's not exactly how you're having the card selected, but that's how you explain you're going to have it selected. After you do this explanation and you dribble the cards into the hands like this, now you get the deck in the standard peak position. Then you lift it up, you say stop, the spectator looks at the card, you hold your break, and then you double cut or triple cut to control the card. One more little touch on the spectator peek is to not actually riffle the cards yourself and have the spectator say stop. Lots of magicians use this technique where you hold the deck and you say to somebody, would you mind just stepping up and with your thumb just push back a little portion of cards. So the spectator actually just uses their thumb, they push back a little portion, you still get your little finger break and you still can control the card. It's exactly the same technique as if you were to say stop, but they use their thumb, they opened it up at the two of hearts, the little finger holds a break, little flush break like this, and once again if you cut to the break first, then do a triple cutting action, that will put the peaked card to the bottom. You can easily use an in-the-hands riffle shuffle action to control a peaked card. This is all there is to it. The spectator calls out stop as you riffle, they look at the card, it's lost in the deck, apparently, and you go right into an in-the-hands riffle shuffle. Now in this case I controlled the peaked card to the bottom. Not only that, I glimpsed, I know it's the 10 of clubs. The action is very simple, you just get a break, in this case below the card. So I have a little finger break below the card, you can do the riffling action. All you're going to do is cut the deck for an in-the-hands riffle shuffle. You lift up on the side, you riffle till you get to the break, you glimpse at the card. We've done this before, but now you can apply it to a peaked card. Now that's how to control the peaked card to the bottom of the deck and glimpse at it at the same time. You could just as easily control the peaked card to the top of the deck. Here the action is very similar. The spectator calls out stop. They look at the card. The only difference is you drop their card before you get the break. So now you have a little finger break above the peaked card. So you can do the same action. You riffle, you shuffle, but now remember to finish the shuffle with the left-hand packet, because that means the top card of the left-hand packet will be the chosen card, and that's how to get it to the top of the deck. Now Di Vernon has an overhand shuffle technique for controlling several peaked cards. It goes like this. Spectator calls out stop. They look at the card, that's number 1. You drop it, you go right into the Di Vernon overhand shuffle technique. So that will control the first card to the top of the deck. In this case it was the 9 of hearts. Now you're ready to repeat the demonstration. A second spectator calls out stop. They look at the 8 of diamonds. You drop that card as well, and once again you get a break above the next peaked card. You turn the deck on the side, ready for the next control. You cut right at the break. You run one card, which is the second peaked card. You in-jog the next card and shuffle off. Now if you do this and then you control, cut right at the break, you've got the 2 peaked cards now in order on the top. You repeat the exact same procedure. A third spectator says stop, 4 of diamonds. You drop the card at regular speed, you get your break, you turn the deck on the side, you run one, in-jog, shuffle off, then cut or shuffle to the in-jog, and that controls the third card to the top. Of course, you can do this with as many peaked cards as necessary. Next we have the peek force. This is a way of forcing a card just by having someone take a little peek. It looks like this. Shuffle up the deck, make sure they're all mixed up, and you say, sir, would you mind helping me out? I'm just going to riffle through the cards. Just call out the word stop anytime you'd like. The spectator says stop. You open the deck at that point. That will be the force card. Now you can let them shuffle the deck. What this is, it's like the riffle force, except it's using a peak. You have a break below the peaked card. So if I want to force the 7 of hearts, that will be the peaked card. You have a little finger break below it, or on the face of that card. Now you hold the deck in the peak position. You can riffle the ends. You just ask a spectator to call out stop. When they say stop, what you do is you pretty much just open up with your little finger break and you show them this card. So the timing should be such that they say stop, stop. You open up, you say please remember your card, close it up, and that's how to use the peak as a force. Eddie Fechter had a very clever thing where he would force several cards using the peak. Basically, it's the same technique. The first selection of several doesn't have to be a force card. That could be a free selection. Let's use that technique. The cards are thoroughly mixed, no particular setup at all. The first person calls out stop at any point. This is a free selection, and they look at their card, in this case, the 6 of clubs. You drop that card, and you say to spectator number 2, would you just say stop here, just take a look at a card. That's your card, the 3 of hearts. You drop that card, you get a new break, and now you're going to riffle force all the way down the line. There's card number 3, drop that. How about you, sir? Just call out stop. There you go, take a look at your card, drop that. So all I'm doing is I'm opening up at the break, showing the next person their card, dropping that card, and establishing a new break at the next card. You can do this with as many cards as you'd like. Anytime you want to control the cards, you just do a few cuts. That will bring, in this case, I think it was either 4 or 5 peaked cards, all on the top in order. Here's a method of catching a glimpse after a spectator peeks at a card. What you do is you say to a spectator, just call out stop anytime you'd like. They say stop, they look at the card. At this point, I have absolutely no idea what it is. But you riffle the deck, you square them up, and you sneak a little peek. Right now, I know the chosen card was the 3 of clubs. How do I know? I looked. A secret glimpse. Here's what happens. You go through, they look at the card, you hold the standard little finger break. In this case, it's at the 3 of clubs. But at this point, you don't know what their card is. All you know is that you've got a little finger break below their selection. Now what you do is you square up the deck, but you start a side steal action. With your right thumb, you lift up on the break. With the fingertip of the left hand, you start to push the peaked card off to the side. You do it again like this until it's about halfway out. Of course, this is the exposed view. From the front, there's nothing to see. Once it's about halfway out, believe it or not, to get your glimpse, you literally crimp the card, wrap it up around the deck like this until you can actually see the index corner. Of course, all of that's hidden. Right now, I'm definitely looking at the 3 of clubs. But you do that, then you square up the card, give a little spring to help take out the break or take out the crimp, and immediately you can let the cards get shuffled. Now here's another way of getting the glimpse. As the cards are being squared up on the table and handed out for shuffling, what you do is you say call out stop. They say stop. They look at it and you say, look, your card's lost in the deck. Here, why don't you shuffle the deck? That way I can't possibly know where it is. Well, I took a little peek, a little glimpse. The card is the 8 of clubs. And all you have to do to find it is either cut to it or call it. Use psychic vibrations. It's entirely up to you. The technique is this. They say stop. They look at the card. This is glimpse number 1. You get a little finger break. Then as you turn your hand over to hand the spectator the deck, the little finger pushes the entire upper block to the left. So it's stepped to the left. The thumb goes underneath. As you tap the ends onto the table, you get a little peek as the deck turns over. You square them up. I noticed it was the 10 of diamonds. You hand the deck out to be shuffled, and you've got the information you need. Another little technique for catching a glimpse, this is glimpse number 2. The spectator calls out stop, you riffle, you get your little finger break. You say, oh, by the way, you didn't look at the bottom card, did you, the 6 of diamonds? They say no. They say, oh, good, but don't forget the 4 of clubs. That's how you get your little glimpse, your little peek. The spectator says stop, you hold the little finger break. As you turn your left hand palm down to say, oh, you didn't look at the bottom card, did you? You do the same basic action. The entire upper packet is stepped with the little finger. It's stepped to the left. But here, the glimpse is taken right underneath the thumb. So as I'm pointing out the 6 of diamonds on the face of the pack, my eyes are looking right here, and I can see this index corner of the 4 of diamonds. So immediately square up the deck and said, here, you might want to shuffle those cards, make sure they're well mixed. Another way of getting a glimpse is in the act of revolving the deck face up. Somebody peeks at a card, they look at it, you get your standard little finger break, and very quickly you revolve the cards over, and you say, here, you might want to shuffle them. It's basically the same technique. Here's a very, very subtle method of getting a glimpse at a peeked at card. Let me do it for you first, just to show you how fair it looks. The cards are all mixed up. The spectator calls out stop at any point. At this point I have no idea what the card is. But I hold the little finger break, and you make one quick little pressure fan. You say your card could be any one of the 52 cards. Just in the act of making the pressure fan, I peeked at the card. It's the 9 of diamonds. This move was by Ed Marlowe. It's the pressure fan peek. And the action is very similar to the other methods. You've got yourself a little finger break, and as you make the pressure fan, you step the upper packet to the left, just like before. So let's look at the card. There's the King of Spades. I'm holding a little finger break, but at this point, the performer doesn't know what the card is. When you make the pressure fan, like before, the upper packet is stepped to the left, like this. That way you can see this little index corner. I'll do it a little bit more. That way you can really see it. So you've got the finger break. You step the packet over to the left. In the act of doing the pressure fan, you have to squeeze the cards, and I look right in here. But of course, the right or the left hand covers that. I look right in there. I get a little peek of the King of Spades index corner. As you make the fan, you close up the fan, immediately let the cards get shuffled. You can also do the same action in the act of making a spring. So a card is peeked. You say, look at the card, remember what it is. You get the little finger break, and then you spring the cards. And in the act of springing the cards, you notice that the card was the 2 of diamonds. Exactly the same technique as before. You get the little finger break. You step the top packet over to the left. In the act of starting to bend the cards, just like for the pressure fan, you look right in here. I see the 5 of spades, but you do a little spring. So the action is, you look at a card. It could be any one of these 52 cards. You might want to shuffle those up, and you've gotten the secret glimpse. You can also peek at a card and have the card secretly crimped. I'll show you a couple of methods. Well, the first method I've already explained. Definitely, if you have somebody look at a card, it's lost in the deck, and you do this peeking action, that automatically puts a very large bridge in the card. In fact, it's almost embarrassing how big that bridge is, the 3 of clubs. It's almost literally bent in half in the action of taking the secret glimpse. Here's what you do, just like before. They look at the card. You get the little finger break. This time you don't worry about getting a glimpse. What you're worried about is actually putting a crimp in the card. So you lift up at the break with your right thumb. The fingers go in, push the card over, lift up, and that gives it a very, very nice crimp. This was invented by Paul LePaul. It's the same as the side steal location, but it puts a very healthy crimp into the card. One of my personal favorite methods of getting a crimp into the peeked card is very subtle. You start like this, thoroughly shuffled deck. The spectator calls out stop any place they'd like. They look at the card, you close it up, immediately you give it a little cascading action, and you say, oh, by the way, you might want to shuffle the deck. Now this is a little corner crimp. Anytime you want to find the little corner crimp, you just hold the cards on the edge. Oh, this one was a big one. Very obvious. I didn't want to take a chance. 10 of diamonds. Here's what you do. The spectator calls out stop. They look at the card. You get your standard little finger break. And just like before, you start the side stealing action. But here you only have to lift up with your thumb, put the tip of the little finger into the break, and move the card over just a little bit. Just get it started so the corner is exposed. Then immediately the little finger pushes up on the corner. What that does is that puts a very healthy crimp into the card. And at the same time, you sort of cascade the cards from hand to hand. And right away, it's got a crimp. So after the spectator finishes shuffling the deck, you just hold them like this. You release pressure. That way you can cut right at the crimp. And don't forget to always take the crimp out before you reveal the selection. So there's a few techniques that you can use with the spectator peek. Well, right now, in your personal arsenal of card sleights, you have many techniques for controlling cards. Physically selected cards, you can use key cards, you can even have someone take a little peek. This is actually very good. It's a good idea to use different selection procedures and different controls for different situations. Once in a while, you'll actually have the card physically removed and you'll control it. Other times you might not want to control the card, you'll just use a key card instead. Other times it's better to just say, take a little peek, picture a card in your mind. Remember, different techniques have different advantages and disadvantages. The more choices you have, the better off you are at keeping the audience guessing. Now, a little bit later, I'm going to talk about false counts and false displays, but right now let me spend just a few minutes to show you a few fancy ways to count cards and also several techniques for gaining a secret count. This is the flip-over count by Steranko. It's just a lovely little way to count cards one at a time from the bottom of the deck. Just a little flipping action. That's all there is to it. There's really nothing to explain here. Basically, it's just a very light touch with the fingertips of the left hand. The right hand just sort of strokes the deck across, and the cards flip face up. You can also use the same technique to count cards one at a time from the face or the top of the deck. Just deal them into the other hand, let them flip face up like this. This would be the flip-over deal. Di Vernon had a very subtle, flourishy way to count cards from the top of the deck. Basically, you just hold the cards in a dealing position, and one at a time, you flip them over like this. Very simple technique. It's kind of a fun way to count cards one at a time. Basically, you just pull them over the tips of the fingers. The middle finger reaches over the top, the first finger on the bottom. If you move the thumb out of the way, you can use these two fingers to flip the card face up. This is a flourish count by Di Vernon. Arthur Buckley, in his cards to pocket routine, had a very similar type of false count. It's not a false count, actually. It's a real count, but it's a flourishy real count. He'd have a small packet of cards in his hands like this, and this is good for stage. One at a time, you count the cards like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as many as you want. Nothing much to it. You just hold the cards in a dealing position, push up with the thumb, and then hook the first and second finger around like this. That's the fancy flourish count by Arthur Buckley. Here's another little flourish false count where you have a small packet of cards held in the left hand. Nothing much to it. The idea is you just sort of count them one at a time into the right hand, giving them a little pivoting action over the middle finger. All you have to do is hold them not in a dealing grip, but actually a little further upward or outward. And when you deal them, you push over with the left thumb towards the right, and the cards will pivot around the middle finger of the left hand. So that's all there is to this action here. You can also get a lovely little flourish action, a little pivoting action between the thumbs as you deal the cards onto the table. Now you can do this two ways. One, very gently, very soft turnaround action, or you can do a very loud and almost obnoxious snap. Depending upon your performing situation, that's the action. Nothing much to this either. You just sort of push it over to the side. With your thumb of the other hand, you lift up on the edge and you trap the card face up between the two thumbs, just like that. So you might want to practice that a few times, have some fun with it. If you have a small number of cards that you need to count from the front of the deck or the top of the deck, here's a clever little way to do it. Just hold the deck in a dealing position, use the index finger to reach over and turn the cards forward one at a time. Usually this is good for just a small number of cards. A nice little touch I like to add to this personally is rather than just reach over with the index finger to the front and pull the card forward, you could use the left thumb to move the top card over first. That way you've got a nice clean corner to grab onto, push down on that, and that gives you a very elegant way to turn cards one at a time face up like this. Next, we have the long distance spinner by Audley Walsh. The idea is to just boomerang cards up into the air. Takes a little bit of a feel, but it's kind of fun to do. What happens is you hold the end of the deck like this. The thumb tip actually presses down and you push forward. That's the action. This will take some practice, but it's kind of fun to practice over a bed. Makes it easier to pick up the cards. So if you do this right, you press down, you sort of shake your hand forward a little bit, and in theory, you can get cards to spin up in the air and catch them in the other hand. Now you can catch them in the other hand, or if you're working up on stage and you want to count a small group of maybe 6 or 8 cards, you can count them by flipping them into the air and catching them in a hat. That's a nice technique. Next, we have the Martin Lewis method of boomeranging cards into the air. You hold the extreme right end of the deck like this. The index finger pushes down, and you snap cards up. This one also takes a feel. You hold them by the extreme corners, that's important, with the middle finger and thumb. The first finger presses downward and then relieves the pressure, and you boomerang the card up into the air. Now it's time to talk about some secret methods of counting. If you need to get a break under, say, 3 or 4 cards, but you don't want to openly just count, place them back onto the deck and hold a little finger break, here's a clever method. It's called the bevel count. What you do here is you have no breaks yet. You pick up the deck, hold it in the hands, and you can almost stare at the deck. And right in front of the audience, I'm getting a break under 3 or 4 or 5 cards. It's entirely up to you. The way to do this, probably would be easier to follow face up, is you bevel the cards. So they're beveled to your left. And it's the middle finger of the left hand that does the action. That acts as the guide. What you're going to do is with your right hand, you're going to squeeze the ends between the fingers and thumb. And as you do this, these cards will buckle upward, and they will count off the tip of the middle finger. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. So you do this very silently, just in the act of squaring up the deck. You can get an instant secret count. That's called the bevel count. Another method is the pinky count. The pinky count was by Steranko. For the pinky count, you hold the deck in the hand like this, a regular dealing grip, and the little finger pulls down and counts off 1, 2, 3, 4 cards, any small group of cards you'd like. The action is this. Little finger goes right to the corner, and you pull downward. There's 1, 2, 3. You let the cards go over the tip of the finger one at a time. Actually, it's just like riffling. That's the basic action, riffling. But you do this very, very gently, and it helps considerably if the cards are beveled. The little finger pulls down. There's 1, 2, 3. Let's say you just need 3 cards. You do the pinky count. Next, we have the thumb count. Thumb count is very accurate and very fast. Let's say you need to have a break under, oh, say 10 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can transfer it to the little finger break, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards. The action is this. You hold the deck in the dealing grip. It helps now if the cards are beveled, this time to the right, just a little bit, and it's the left thumb that is going to riffle the outer left-hand corner like this. So what happens is as you riffle down, you count mentally as the cards pass the tip of the thumb. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now you can just pick up and cut at that point, or if you'd like, you can transfer this thumb break to a little finger break. Here's how you do that. You've got this 10-card break. You relax pressure at the heel of the hand, and that will transfer the break from here to the heel. So right now there's a break here. If you press the thumb base against that break and press down, that transfers it now to the little finger side. So basically you can get a 10-card break with your thumb, or as many as you'd like with your thumb, transfer it to the heel of the thumb, press down, and it goes over to the little finger side. Let's say you'd like to give a demonstration of your technique with the fingertips. What I'm going to do is use the sensitive fingertips of my hand to cut off any number of cards. So you ask a spectator to name a number. Not too big, not too small. Say somewhere between 10 and 20. Let's say they say 13. All you do is you use the fingertips, you reach over, instantly cut off 13 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 cards. I must admit I cheated just a little bit. While you're explaining that you have very sensitive fingers, your left thumb is thumb counting 11 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's a good place to start. You've got an 11-card thumb break, but you're busy talking about your fingertips of the right hand. You say name any number between 10 and 20. Well, if they happen to say 11, you're all set. If they say 12 or 13, you just add 1 or 2 cards more. Usually it'll be somewhere around 12, 13, 14 cards. So you only have to thumb count just a few more. Let's say they say 15. You've already got 11. You just thumb count 1, 2, 3, 4 more. As you say, I'll cut off that number of cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Let's say you need to get a secret break under, say, 12 cards from the top. Here's a very subtle method that's actually very easy. All you do is you go up to a spectator and you say, I'm going to go through the cards like this. Anytime you'd like, just call out the word stop. They stop, they make a selection, and as you square up the deck, you've got your secret break, in this case under 12 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Very, very easy. No thumb counts, no pinky counts. All you do is openly, you push over 3 cards, 3 more cards, 3 more cards, and 3 more cards, and you in-jog the 12th card. Of course, this is done under the act of having a card selected. So the timing is important. You say to a spectator, once again, I'll go for a break under 12 cards. You say, would you mind helping me? I'm just going to go through the cards like this, one at a time, and as I do, this call out stop anytime you'd like. I have in-jogged the 12th card, the selection is made, you lift up on the in-jog, now you've got your secret break under your secret number. Another very subtle method for getting a secret count, if you need a break, say, 4 or 5 cards from the bottom, the same idea. You could say, now your card is lost in the deck. For all I know, it could be anywhere in the entire pack. All you do is you square up the deck. You've got a secret break, in this case, 4 cards from the bottom. You cut off, there's your 4 cards. This is just a sight count. There's no tricky maneuver to it. All you do is you have to have some reason for gesturing by spreading through the deck. One of my personal favorites is to control a card, say to the top of the deck, but your action is you say, as far as I know, your card could be any one of the 52 cards in the deck. You sight count the bottom 4 cards. I'm looking, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I close up the spread, I just get a break between the 4th card from the bottom and the rest of the deck. So now you've got a secret break under 4. That's the sight count from the bottom. Well, what do you say right now we veer off into a whole new direction? The truth is, up to this point, I've sort of been hesitant about even mentioning that this technique exists. Probably the reason for that is I might be a little bit embarrassed. Normally what you'd like to do is to use a secret technique sparingly, maybe once or twice in an entire performance. I have been guilty of using this next technique up to 10 times or more in one single effect. In fact, many magicians all over the world have a tendency to overuse this technique. I have come to know it as old reliable. It has many uses. You can use this technique to force a card, to control a card, to switch or to change a card. In fact, you can also use it to give a pseudo second deal demonstration, dealing off the bottom, even a pseudo middle deal. The technique is called the multiple lift. Now, normally you're going to use this technique to do what is known as a double lift, or showing 2 cards as one, but the technique is called multiple lift because it applies to triple lifts and quadruple lifts as well. Well, now I'd like to talk about the double lift, and there's basically 2 parts to it. The first thing you need to do is you need to prepare, do the get ready. Now, the get ready is getting a little finger break under 2 cards, unless of course you're going to do a triple lift or a quadruple lift, then you'd get a break under 3 or 4 cards. Now, there's several techniques for getting this secret count. We've already covered them. That would be the bevel count. Remember, that's where you push back, bevel the deck, and from above you do a little squeezing action, and you count 2 cards that way. That works very well. Another technique is the pinky count. That's where the fingertip of the left little finger very gently reaches down and counts cards. That's another very nice way to get a 2-card get ready. Also, we've got the thumb count. Thumb count is when you riffle down with your thumb 2 cards, and if you need the break at the little finger, all you have to do is let the break ride up to the heel of the hand. Then if you press down with your thumb here, that will transfer the break to the little finger. There's other versions for getting a 2-card get ready. A very simple one used by Di Vernon is to simply take the top card, sort of gesture for a moment. While you're doing that, you do a 1-card break. Then when you take this first card, put it back onto the deck, you're ready for a double lift. Also, a very simple method, which I don't personally recommend, but it certainly is easy. You just push 2 cards over, then you pull them back. Now, either way, you've got to get ready for a little finger break. One technique that a lot of magicians use that's really a bad habit as far as I'm concerned, and that is actually lifting up at the back end. That's a very difficult thing to hide, so try not to get into that habit. Now, here's a little tip on doing the double lift. There are many different versions. First, I'll show you a few versions that use this double lift get ready with the little finger break. Once you've got the break, one method is to just reach into that break, grab the 2 cards, and flip them over like this. That's a relatively casual method for doing a double lift. What happens here is you just reach into the break with your fingers, grab onto that double, and snap the 2 cards off the left thumb. You flip the 2 cards face up so that they're out-jogged. The reason for this is when you square that double lift back onto the deck, you need to reestablish a little finger break. Now, the way to do that is the index finger pulls down. If you pull down with the index finger and release pressure here, what happens is that corner will pop up. You do that as you square the double back onto the deck. So now it's face up, but you've once again reestablished a little finger break. To turn it face down, you can do the same thing. Just reach into the break, flip the double over like that, and you have done your double lift. Now, Di Vernon has a very clever method for performing the double lift. It goes like this. Once again, you need to have the 2-card get ready. The Di Vernon method is you just pick up the double and transfer it to this position. You give a nice little bend that puts a nice bow in the card, so you can flip them over like this. You go like this, very lightly, flip them face down. One of the nice things about the Di Vernon method is because you pick up the 2 cards and place them in your hand in position, you give a nice little bow to the cards. That means when you flip them face up, they have a bow like this. That makes it very easy to pick them up gently and place them back into position so you can flip them face down like that. Now, another technique comes from expert card technique. This method is very similar. All you do is you get a little finger break, but instead of reaching into the break or picking up the 2 cards, it's the left thumb that does the action, right here at the corner. This is what the move looks like. Turn the double face up, turn the double face down. Now, breaking this down, here's exactly what happens. You have the 2-card break. The left thumb goes at the extreme corner and presses downward. Now, as you press down here, you loosen up the grip with the fingers, and that will push the double card. It will basically pivot on the base of the thumb. Now, you can grab this end here, this corner, flip the 2 cards face up, immediately square them onto the deck, and reestablish a little finger break. Once again, you do the exact same action to turn the cards face downward. You press down with the thumb, pivot the 2 cards over, reach for this corner, turn them face down like that. Also, if you don't want to put the double onto the deck, you can turn them face up in your fingertips like this, then snap them face down. There are many, many variations to the double lift. Now, let me show you a few versions of the double lift that do not require the little finger break as a get ready. This is the Ed Marlowe method for doing the get ready for the double lift. It doesn't require a little finger break. What happens instead is your thumb riffles down 2 cards exactly like a thumb count, but you leave it as a thumb break. All you do is you sort of roll the thumb over, and that will push the top 2 cards to the side. That makes it very easy to reach and grab them to flip them face up. This is the action once again. You count down 2. It's basically the ball of the thumb pad, that just pushes over the top 2 cards a little bit. All you get is a fraction of an inch, but that's plenty to reach over, to grab onto, turn the double face up. That is the Ed Marlowe get ready for the double lift. Now, another method for the Ed Marlowe get ready is instead of rolling it over and flipping the card sideways, you could roll it over, grab the corner, and turn it face up this way. That works as well. The instantaneous double lift. This is a good one. The instantaneous double lift, there's no get ready at all. All you do is you take a deck like this with no preparation whatsoever. You just pick it up. You say, let me show you the card of the deck, like this, and that is the instantaneous double lift. Now, this was invented by Dr. Jacob Daly. All that happens is you use the index finger, and it helps a little bit if the deck is beveled. If you bevel the deck slightly, you reach over here, you're contacting 2 cards, and you snap the 2 cards face up. So if you do a double lift, you can use it as a change or as a secret switch. That's the Dr. Jacob Daly method. Let me show you a couple of tips on this. One is the fingertip of the right or the left middle finger hooks over the front end like this. If you don't do that, sometimes if you don't do that, and you go for the instantaneous double, you lift up 1 card, then a second card, the audience might see that from this corner. So it's a good habit to actually press that fingertip down, bevel the card slightly to do the instantaneous double lift. Very, very quick and easy method. Next we have the Leipzig double lift. Now the Leipzig double lift also does not use a get ready. This is the Leipzig double lift. You just hold the deck in your hand and you reach over on the other side and turn the two cards face up. That's the Leipzig method. It's very similar to the Dr. Jacob Daly method. You just reach over into this other side here. You lift up with your thumb, you grab one card, a second card, you square them up, you reach up a little bit, you ride that break upward towards this other thumb, and you snap the two cards face up. It's a good idea to hold them at the fingertips like this. That way that keeps them perfectly squared. Flip it face down, you're ready for the next double lift. Next we have the snap over double lift, and this is by Paul the Paul. The snap over double lift is you just sort of cascade the cards and snap the last double face up. Now this, I must admit, takes a touch. Quite a lot of practice, but it's kind of fun to do. You just cascade the cards and you hold back two cards. That's the part that takes the practice. The easy part is to snap the double face up and grip it with the fingertips of the left hand. And also you can snap it and turn it face down. Just make sure they don't separate. That, of course, would give the trick away. Flip it face down, you're all ready for action. Now it comes time for my personal favorite method. This is the one I use most often, and it was invented by Larry Jennings. It's called the snap double. Now for the Larry Jennings snap double, once again, there's no advanced preparation of the deck. You just pick up the pack, you're ready to do the double lift. In fact, a nice thing about this is you can do a single card or a double card or even a triple card with exactly the same handling. This is the snap double. All you have to do is thumb count two cards. With the thumb tip, you reach down, bevel the deck slightly, and let two cards count. Then the middle finger is here, so if you bow the cards with your thumb, you sort of roll the thumb like the Ed Marlowe method, but you don't move the middle finger out of the way. That causes the two cards to bow. Now if you take the tip of the index finger, place it into that bowed area, now you can lift up with your thumb. The card won't lift up because it's still trapped underneath the heel of the thumb. You press down here with your thumb on top, pressing downward, and at the same time you move these three fingers out of the way. What that does is it gives you this. A lovely little snap. That's the Larry Jennings snap double. Now like I said, another nice touch about the Larry Jennings method is you can just as easily get 3 cards or 4 cards. The technique is exactly the same. You just thumb count exactly how many cards you need, get the bow, turn the cards over. Of course, the more cards you use, the thicker the stack. Now I'd like to show you a method for doing the double lift using only one hand. Here's a one-handed double lift. All you do is you sort of count the cards like this. When nobody's paying attention, you sort of flip them over with one hand. In fact, you can also flip them over face down like this and square them onto the deck. That gives you a one-handed double lift. Now this is very similar to the D'Amico double lift, but the final part is a little bit different. What happens is you thumb count 2, you lift up, so now I've got 2 cards right here. The index finger goes here, the tip of the middle finger goes to this corner. Now that you've got it by both corners with the thumb and the middle finger, then you let it pass by the base of the thumb. Now the middle finger pushes back slightly, the index fingertip pushes down, and that pivots the 2 cards all the way face up onto the deck like this. Now once you've got them face up, you can grab them with the other hand if you'd like, or you can reach over the front end and square them onto the pack. So that's a one-handed version of performing the double lift. Now let's talk about a few miscellaneous double lifts from a spread or from the center of the deck. This first double lift is from the spread. All you do is you spread through the deck like this. Anytime you'd like, you reach the middle, you just flip the cards over and you say, there's the 5 of diamonds. You flip it face down, and you've got yourself a double lift. Now the way this is done is you go through the pack, you spread them from hand to hand. When you get to the point where you'd like to do the double, you've already got 2 cards pushed over, so you just pull back, you get a little finger break under the 2 cards. Now you reach into that finger break with the fingertips of the right hand, you grab the double, flip them face up, square them onto the deck, push down to reestablish your break. That way you can reach into the break once again, flip them face down, thumb off the card, and you've got your double lift. There's another version of this double lift from the spread that comes from my good buddy, Frank Zach. The Frank Zach method of getting a double from the spread is a little bit different. You actually go right into it. Flip it face down, thumb it off. Now I realize this may look the same, but the technique is different. In this version, the technique is you find a card that you want to do the double lift on, which would be a single card in the middle, but you add that to the bottom card from the spread in the right hand. All you do is you square up the 2 cards, so now both cards are squared up as one. on the bottom of the spread in the right hand. Then you flip those 2 cards face up, do any last-minute squaring action, reach into the break, flip them face down, and you've got a double lift from the spread. Now I'd like to show you a couple of methods for doing a double lift from the middle of the deck. This first double lift, all you do is you riffle down with your thumb, you stop someplace in the middle, and you just reach in there and you pull the card out like that. Now it looks like you just take out a single card, but actually that was a double card, so you're ready to do a change or a secret switch. This is actually quite easy to do. You just do a thumb count, you riffle down, you get anywhere you'd like to go, you reach in with your thumb of the right hand, and as you do that, the thumb of the left hand counts off 2 cards right there. You pinch those 2 cards out of the middle between the thumb and the first finger of the right hand, and you pull straight forward. So you're pulling 2 cards right out of the middle of the deck. You flip them face up, you hold the little finger break with the left hand, then you can snap the double face down any way you'd like. So this is from Mr. Hartman, the double lift from the middle of the deck. Now let me show you a couple of miscellaneous things with a double lift. One is a method of cleaning up the double. Let's say you do a standard double lift like this, and that actually is 2 cards. So you're holding 2 cards as one as a double lift, but if you want to, anytime you'd like, you can hand it out, and it's a single card. Now what this is called the KM move. The KM move is this. Let's say we've got 2 cards, which you flip face up, so there's actually 2 cards there. What happens is you hold the 2 cards with the thumb on top, all 4 fingers underneath. You turn the left hand with the deck, palm downward. Now it's the fingertips of the left hand that actually contact the back of the double, and that's when you separate, you steal it back, just like the back slip move, you steal it back onto the top of the deck. In fact, this might be a little bit easier to see with a different colored card. So imagine that this is just an indifferent card, oh, say an extra joker from an entirely different deck, and that's on top. We're going to do a double lift to apparently show the top card as the 3 of spades. This is the action of the KM move. Oh, a color changing back. That's not a bad effect in itself. Here's the method. Like I said before, you turn your double face up, you hold the 2 cards as one in the right hand, and as the left hand turns over, remember the fingertips grab onto that card and secretly steal it back onto the deck. Now this is done under cover of either stroking the card with the thumb, or more often than not it's done as you snap the card and now you have a single. Here's another method for doing a double lift and a nice little cleanup action. What you do is any standard double or triple lift, actually this works better with a double. Triple is a whole different world. Let's say you have only 2 cards which you turn face up, and that is 2 cards. When you turn them face down, here's a nice little subtlety. You can turn them face down like this, and when you do that, the card is outjogged from the deck, and the part that's outjogged is just a single card. What you've done is you've gotten rid of the second card onto the top of the deck in the act of turning the double face down. Now the way you do this exactly is like this. You've got the 2 card finger break. You can turn them face up any way you'd like, but to be consistent, it's probably a good idea to do something that simulates the action you'll use to turn them face down. So there's the double, face up, you have the little finger break. All you're going to do is pivot the 2 cards over. So that's the double, pivot it over. You do a little bow action, so you can reach with your thumb and grab the double, and in the act of turning the double face down, what you're going to do is use the fingertips of the right hand to separate the double. But you separate it after it's out of the audience's line of vision. So by the time you separate the cards, you're about here, and in slow motion, you're actually putting the bottom of the 2 cards back onto the deck as the uppermost of the 2 cards remains outjogged. So that's a nice little cleanup for the double lift. Let me show you one more little cleanup that's kind of fun to do. I use this all the time myself. You do your standard double lift or triple lift. Let's use a different card. How about this one? 9 of spades. So that's actually 2 cards, but it looks like one. There's the 9 of spades. You flip it face down, and this accomplishes the same thing as before. You end up with a single card. In fact, this technique is probably a little bit easier. What happens is you've got your double. Let's say it's showing a 4 of hearts. You turn your double face up. In the act of flipping it face down in exactly the same way, sideways, like the page of a book, what you're going to do is you're going to, with the fingertips, push the uppermost card forward, and that way the lowermost of the 2 cards will land squarely onto the deck, and you're left with just a single card. Now at regular speed it looks like this. There's a 4 of hearts, and by the time it's flipped face down, you've got what apparently is the 4 of hearts, but now of course it's an entirely different card. Now like I said at the very beginning, the double lift can be used for many, many things. Try not to get too carried away and use it for everything, but if you have to, you can use it as a force. Let's say you want to force the 5 of hearts. Well, that's on top. I wouldn't say this is the best technique for forcing a card, but technically you could do this. You can say, as I go through the deck, just call out stop anytime you like. Whatever card they say stop upon, you place it on the top of the deck, and as you might have guessed at this point, you just do a double lift. That gives the impression that the spectator stopped at the 4, or the 5 of hearts actually, and if you use that KM move, you can clean up with a single card. So you see how these things work together. You can also, of course, use the double lift as a switch. Now that's what it's normally used for, a secret switch. For example, if you're doing the ambitious card and you're showing that the Queen of Diamonds is always coming to the top, all you do is you turn it face down, place it into the middle of the deck, do your little magic, and it comes right back up to the top. That was just a simple standard double lift. The only difference is you never showed the card when you put it in the middle because it was a secret switch. Now using the double lift as a glimpse. It's very, very bold, but it actually works. Let's say you want to glimpse at the chosen card, which happens to be second from the top. Here's one method for doing it. You could turn the top card face up and say, are you sure that's not your card? Okay, if that's not it, I'll tell you what, I'm going to try again. Well, I took a little peek and I noticed that the chosen card was the 7 of spades. The way that was done is with a double lift. All you do is you turn the top card face up, and in doing that, you get a little finger break under the second card. So you flip this face up, now you've got a double back to back. You reach in, you turn over the double so the audience can see the 4, and while they're looking at the 4 of clubs, you're actually looking at the 7 behind it. So you say, that's not your card? Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll try again. So that's using the double lift to get a secret glimpse.